And today's episode on Dynasty Startup Strategy, team building, and roster construction during your Dynasty Startup Drafts. And so today, maybe you have just started up a new Dynasty League. You've gathered up some of your friends that you're used to playing redraft with, and now you decided to start up a Dynasty League. Maybe you're going into your fifth dynasty startup. Maybe you're a seasoned vet and this is your 20th dynasty startup and you know how it's all gone, right? Well, let me tell you, this can help you stay grounded because no matter how many dynasty startups you've done, you just don't know exactly how every dynasty startup draft will fall. And that brings us to the first and foremost rule is to know your dynasty league's format. Whether it's superflex, tight end premium, what is the tight end premium? How many tight ends do you have to start? Whether it's best ball or lineup league, and how many starters there are just in general. Is it a shallow league? Do you only start 9 or 10 players? Do you start 11, 12, or more players? Whether that is the case or not, that stuff matters. Next up, probably the most important thing, and that is do not go into a dynasty startup draft committed to one particular build. Don't go in saying, yes, I'm just going to draft all young players in this league and go for future draft picks. Or I am definitely going to build a win now team. You have no idea what your fellow league mates are going to be drafting. They may let a Christian McCaffrey fall to the 6th round. They may let Cam Ward fall to the 6th round, right? You need to be adaptable and let the value fall to you. And when it is there, be able to jump on it. You don't want to be committed into a build right off the bat and then you pass on good value because you want to stick to your committed build. Okay, so that brings us to the third part. And when you get to the startup, once you start making your selections, the first 4 to 5 rounds I try to stay as flexible as possible. Now there are a couple of players earlier in the drafts, one going in round 2, and that's Saquon Barkley. And then in round 3, on average, is A.J. Brown. And now if you draft Saquon Barkley in the second round of your Dynasty Startup Draft, you are almost definitely committing yourself to a win now build. There's no reason to draft a Saquon Barkley and build a young team that you're waiting 2 or 3 years on to develop into something, right? Saquon Barkley is somebody who is a win now asset, all right? He's 28 years old, coming off of a 2,000-yard season where he touched the ball 400 times. It's very unlikely that at least the odds are stacked against him that he will replicate what he did last season. Now, he could come close. Don't get me wrong. I think Saquon's a fine football player and a fine asset in redraft. But as far as a dynasty startup goes, unless you're committing to like a running back horde early on, Saquon is a tough asset for me to swallow early on in the second round, making me have to go towards more veterans for the rest of the early rounds of the draft. Because it doesn't make any sense to draft Saquon Barkley in the second round and then go ahead and draft Cam Ward, Tyler Warren, Mika Ibuka, all these rookies later on, and then you're sitting on Saquon Barkley, like he's going to score a ton of points, and these rookies just in general are not, opposed to some of the veterans. So that doesn't make sense as a team build. So you really put yourself in a pickle by drafting Saquon Barkley early on. Now, A.J. Brown, on the other hand, he's in the third round, and he's the same age, but yet At wide receiver, they tend to play longer. So AJ Brown, I'm saying you're not totally committing yourself by taking him in the third round. Now, when you get into rounds 4, 5, and 6, you're going to be tasked with the dilemma of, do I take Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry? Most of you who may have played redraft for a long time, you know Christian McCaffrey is a first round pick, right? Well, in Dynasty with Superflex, that doesn't mean he's a first round pick, okay? It doesn't even mean he's a second round pick because of his age and his body breaking down, the lower body. He's falling in drafts. And so I was able to get him in the 6th round of a recent Dynasty startup. Now, I didn't go into that draft expecting to take Christian McCaffrey. A couple of startups I had done earlier, he had gone in the 5th round. So I wasn't expecting him to fall to me at pick 605, where he was staring me down the barrel. Not only he was staring me, but so was Derrick Henry. And honestly, I just chose to diversify. I like Derrick Henry more than Christian McCaffrey, actually. I don't care that Henry's a year older. I think he's going to play longer just because of who he is. All right. So, like, I just took McCaffrey because I wanted to diversify and have an extra share of Christian McCaffrey versus all of the Derrick Henry shares I had already. Now, that comes into more of a portfolio type build, and if you're just starting, do not worry about that. Just focus on your one draft and building up as much value as you possibly can in your initial draft. Now, how do you do that? Well, when it comes to your turn, one option is to throw your pick up on the block. You don't necessarily have to make that selection, right? Say you took, I don't know, say you had the 4th pick and you got Lamar Jackson, right? Then your 2nd pick comes around and you're at the 209 and you don't really love anybody there. Well, maybe the best option is to trade back. Maybe somebody will give you their 26th first rounder to trade back for their 4th rounder, and you give them their 2nd rounder. Okay, that's a way to accrue some nice value. Plus, you're getting a 4th rounder, which doesn't put you out of the range of productive assets, as in point scoring assets, right? A 2nd rounder down to a 4th rounder, or a late 2nd rounder down to a 4th rounder, isn't that huge of a drop off. Now you have to look at your tiers and set those up ahead of time, or whatever type of rankings you're using. You should definitely be going into a startup with some sort of rankings. Whether you want to use a free site like Keep Trade Cut and write down all of their rankings by positions in tiers, that's one helpful way that I've done it. And as the draft goes on, I cross off the names as they go, and then I can see what players are left in particular tiers. And that helps me as it gets deeper into the draft, into rounds 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, to know what positions are plentiful, what positions may have been depleted. That way I know whether I should, if I'm looking at like a 2nd or 3rd quarterback, do I need to grab them this round? Or is there still 10 decent ones left and I can wait until my next pick to get somebody that's pretty similar or going to give me pretty similar production. Okay, so those are things you want to do prior to the draft, is set up a sort of rankings thing for you that's very helpful. At least for me, it has been. And that way you have a better idea of what to look for in the future rounds. That way also, if it gets to your pick in round 8, right, say you have the 804 and somebody comes up and wants your pick, well, is that 804 worth trading back to the 10th round? Okay, how much value are you going to lose by trading from the 8th round down to the 10th round? Those are things that are going to come up in Dynasty startup drafts, and you need to be prepared for those things to happen. But again, the main point I want to drill home is, again, and I might say this more than once, I've already said it once, so this is twice. Don't go into the startup committing yourself to a particular build before you even made one selection. Now, some startups, they will set your draft order, whether it's a derby style or you just let the chips fall as the randomizer throws them at you. Um, if it's a derby style, you get to pick where you want to have your selection in the first round. So that way you're kind of already starting off a way that you want to make your build. Like if you want to get a top 3 pick, then you're guaranteeing yourself one of the top 3 quarterbacks, which are Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, and Lamar Jackson right now. You can order those 3 in any which way you want. That's not the point of this discussion. Point is if you take one of the top 3 picks, you're ideally looking at getting one of the top 3 quarterbacks. Now, that doesn't mean that you couldn't take a wide receiver like Jamar Chase, or if it's a heavy tight end premium and it's a 2 tight end league, that Brock Bowers wouldn't go early on. I'm going to show you an example right now of the most recent Dynasty startup that I just completed and give you an idea of what I'm talking about. So this was my Birdhouse number 4 league. This was a best ball, 12-team best ball, super flex, tight end premium with a 0.75 tight end premium and start 2 tight end league. Okay, so that's a mouthful for some of you, but what that means is it's a best ball league, meaning that your best scoring players will get into your lineup weekly. So that means that depth is important in a league like this. You don't want to push all of your value into, it's a start 12, right? So you don't want to push all of your value into your top 5 or 6 assets, okay? Now that's opposed to a lineup league, where a lineup league you're only starting those, even if it was a start 12 league, you're only having 12 guys that you're starting every week, right? You're stuck with them. So then it doesn't hurt to have 10 real solid assets. In a shallow league where you start 9 only, that's where you want to go out and get hammers. Like you want to get your as much value into your top 5 or 6 players as possible. But in a deeper league like this, a best ball start 12 format, you want to have an even amount of value. You don't want to be trading away a bunch of middling picks just to move up into the top and then leave yourself with little depth on the backside, because trust me, guys have bad weeks, okay? Even the best wide receivers go weeks where they have 0 or 1 or 2 catches only. And so you need to have depth in those types of formats, in a best ball format, in order to continue to have consistent success. So let me show you this draft board here. And so you can see I picked there at the 104. And here is, now that I have my team up, here you see what I did with my picks. So I had the 104. I traded back out of the 104. Now, I definitely wouldn't really do this in a lineup league, because in a lineup league, you get a specific advantage definitely by having a Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, or Jaden Daniels. But in a best ball league, you can compete with the top end quarterbacks by having a deeper bench of quarterbacks. So I have, as you can see, I ended up drafting Baker Mayfield in the 4th, Michael Penix in the 6th, Bryce Young in the 8th, and Geno Smith in the 10th. So now I have 4 starting quarterbacks, all of which could get into my lineup into the 2 quarterback positions on a weekly basis. And all I need is one of those quarterbacks to hit at 25 or more points to consistently contend with one of the top elite assets at quarterback. So that's the difference in best ball. In best ball, you can actually make up for your difference in tiers at quarterback by doing a strategy like this. All right. So by trading out of the first round, I was able to get a second rounder, which we took Brian Thomas there in the middle of the second round. I got this guy I traded with Ramzak. I got his second rounder, his seventh rounder, and his 10th rounder. And I also got a 26 first from him. In return, he got my first round pick, the Lamar Jackson selection, as well as my 12th and 18th rounder. Now, the 12th rounder is still a decent player. He got Bashul Tutin with that. The 18th round, by the 18th round, there's still some bodies that are okay, but it's not anywhere near on the level of the players in the first 12 rounds, we'll say. Okay. Now, as we go along here, you can see in the third round, I did take A.J. Brown. I thought he was the best value. I took him ahead of a few other running backs there. He was the last wide receiver in this tier that I saw. Now, I like Rashee Rice. Rashee Rice is ADP is usually mid fourth. I was hoping to be able to get him with my next pick here in the fourth, but he got selected at the 402, just ahead of me. So anyway, A.J. Brown, like I said, he is an older asset now. He's still only 28 years old, and receivers can play well until they're, 30, 31. Look at Mike Evans and Devontae Adams, right? And A.J. Brown kind of fits into that profile. Now, he does have some nagging injuries, so who knows what he'll look like in 2 to 3 years. But anyway, I grabbed him without worries because he's still decently young. Then I went Baker Mayfield, who is, you could consider kind of a win-now quarterback, but not really. Baker's only 29, 30 years old still. He's got plenty of years of production yet. It's not like I'm drafting, 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers or a 36-year-old Kirk Cousins from last season, right? So Baker in the fourth. The point I'm getting at here is at the end of the fourth round, I'm still not committed one way or another, win now or young, productive struggle. So after that, then I didn't have my fifth round pick. Then we go into the sixth round. I had traded a fifth rounder back. Now and picked up extra picks later. I can't remember specifically that deal, but I did move back with that. I think, it was with JVN Cut. I traded my fifth rounder, and you can see here I got his sixth and his eighth, and he got my 10th rounder. So a fifth and a 10th for a sixth and an eighth is what it was. So then I went Penix to get another quarterback because of the way the board had fallen. Dak Prescott just went. Justin Fields just went. I saw Michael Penix as the end of a tier, and that's the ideal. That's what I want to mention too. And when you set up your tiers, this is important. If you are seeing that it's at the bottom of a tier, that presents the best value. Typically, you don't want to be grabbing guys at the very top of a tier. That's why you set up tiers, so that you know what players are basically equal value, yet one or two go ahead of the other one. Well, in that case, you'd want to be grabbing the last one because you can get value at other positions if you wait. So by waiting and getting Michael Penix here, I was able to, if I had a fifth round pick, I would have been able to grab a different position in this scenario, right? Now, as I was talking about McCaffrey earlier in the video, McCaffrey, you can see, was sitting there for me at the 605. So was Derrick Henry. I decided that it was just too long to wait for McCaffrey to get picked. McCaffrey's ADP right now is the 507, according to Dynasty Data Lab. Dynasty Data Lab is also another great free resource. Just Google Dynasty Data Lab and plug in Startup ADP, and you'll see the average draft position of all of the players right now. And that doesn't always correlate with what Sleeper has on their board, because there's other sites that do dynasty startups. Now, when I took McCaffrey, this was the point I was getting at with waiting and then seeing what value falls to you, then making your decision. Once I drafted McCaffrey, You parlay that with having A.J. Brown and then Baker Mayfield. Now the team is starting to look more like a win now team, right? Because you have an aging Christian McCaffrey on the roster. You don't have to wait till 2026 or 2027. You are contending in 2025 right now. You make that selection of Christian McCaffrey, you are making a bet that he is going to produce as a top 3 or 4, 5 level running back this season. So I drafted McCaffrey. Then on the way back in the 7th round, Jameson Williams was there. Jameson Williams is going into his 4th year. He's a very productive young wide receiver, but he's not a rookie, like as opposed to drafting Emeka Egbuka. Emeka Egbuka, he got drafted by Tampa, and he's in a crowded wide receiver room. Don't know how many points he's actually going to score this year. So that's where Jameson Williams is a much better bet than Egbuka would be at this point in the draft. If you're trying to win now, had I drafted a rookie running back like RJ Harvey instead of Christian McCaffrey, then Egbuka might be the better bet. Now, Jameson Williams is one of those players that's ideal in dynasty startups because you're not committing one way or the other. He's only in his 4th year. He's still young. He can be good on a team that's young. He can be good on a team that's win now. He's right in the middle. Then, after having drafted McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara was still sitting there, I decided to go with him. And so that really put us in the win now window. You can see some of the other picks there then following Mark Andrews I took. I didn't wait on some rookie tight. I didn't hopefully take Mason Taylor, right? I went Mark Andrews. James Conner then in round 9, another great win now type running back. And the reason I went with these 3 running backs is because I know they're all going to be very productive right out of the gate. They're top 10, 12 running backs. Like in your redraft leagues, those guys are all scoring points. Now, I wasn't able to get them you would easily be able to get them as a top 10 running back in Dynasty, but you don't want to be reaching on them. I grabbed these guys all well within their ADP rounds. I didn't reach. That's another thing you want to avoid is reaching on guys. You don't want to, again, and reaches happen when you are overly committed to a particular build before you need to be. That's when a reach happens. I'm talking taking somebody like Christian McCaffrey in the 3rd or 4th round because you really want to win now, right? Well, you don't have to take him in the 3rd or 4th round. You can grab him. I guess you might have to take him at the very end of the 4th. His ADP is 507 right now. So if you're really in on McCaffrey, you could take him at the back end of the 4th, I guess. That would be okay with a 507 ADP. But ideally, you want to be drafting your players right around where their ADP is. You don't want to be drafting a whole round or 2 ahead of their ADP. That is the main bottom line point. All right. So let me scroll down here a little, give you some other examples. So as the team build went on, you can see here, Dallas Goedert, an older tight end. Darnell Mooney, not too old, but still on a 2nd contract. So he is older compared to, say, Jalen Noel, right? Jalen Noel went 4 picks ahead of Mooney here. Well, Jalen Noel, I have no idea how many points he's going to score in Houston. He's in a crowded wide receiver room as the 2nd rookie wide receiver drafted on his own team versus Darnell Mooney, who was very productive last year. The metrics all show that his production was warranted. So I felt Mooney was a great pick at this part of the draft. Then we went Javonte Williams. Javonte Williams, again, an older running back now. He may only be 26 years old, but for running back standards, that's getting up there. And it's unfortunate, but that's just the way the ball bounces. in Dynasty football. All right. Then we went Zach Ertz, then Dalton Schultz. You can see I was going after points, is what I was going after versus grabbing youth. And I wanted to do all that because I knew that in the 20s, once it got into rounds 20 and later, that's where I could take some deep shot dart throws, right? Brashard Smith was my next pick. Now, Brashard Smith might be a rookie, but I look at him as a player that can score right now. I think that the Chiefs drafted him to fill the old Jerick McKinnon role, and that's what he is hopefully going to be. And so he should be scoring points for me right out the gate, even though I grabbed him in round, whatever this is, 17 or something. So that's the hope, at least. I mean, he is a rookie, and granted, it's a 17th round pick. It's not going to crush me if he doesn't pan out. All right. And then as the draft gets further down, then you can see I took more dart throws. I'll keep rolling down here. I got Josh Palmer in round 19, that is. Then Nick Chubb. Didn't mind grabbing him with all the old guys that I've got. Amari Cooper, unsigned. He's a steal later on because once he signs somewhere, his value will go up at least a little bit once he's got a team. Then it's where I started taking some real dart throws. Jalen Lane with Washington, Audric Estime with Denver, Austin Hooper, a very sneaky later tight end. Did you know that Austin Hooper just scored under what Kyle Pitts scored last year? That is mind-boggling. All right, then I went Efton Chisholm, Keandre Turpin from the Cowboys, Tez Johnson, Parker Washington, Tim Patrick, and Elijah Badger to finish it off. So you can see all the dart throws that I took later on. Now I mixed in a few veterans here. Tim Patrick, somebody who has a role on a very productive offense. He's their wide receiver 3. He's going to be in there in the red zone many times. So he has an opportunity where, as opposed to somebody, say, like the wide receiver 3 on the Cardinals. Who is the wide receiver 3 on the Cardinals? Greg Dortch? I'm not even sure right now. But the point being is the Lions are projected to be in the red zone much more frequently than the Cardinals, thus giving Tim Patrick more opportunities to get a touchdown, which is important for these later round wide receivers in a best ball draft. Again, playing to the format is what I was doing. If this was a lineup league, all 6 of these picks probably would be replaced by running backs. I would just be taking dart throw after dart throw after dart throw on running backs or maybe backup quarterbacks. So you can see just in one example here, my team, how the format as well as how the board fell led to this team that I created. Now, if we go over to somebody like the Fantasy Reaper, the Reaper here, that's Super Mega Toast. The Reaper, I could say he made one major deal. He made a couple others, but the one major deal he made was he traded out of the 101 pick. Now, he's somebody who I know pretty well, been in many startups with him. He's actually a co-owner of mine on another team that I'll show you shortly. But Brandon here, he does not like drafting at the 101. He doesn't like drafting at the ends. He prefers drafting in the middle of drafts. So when we do derby style formats, he likes grabbing a pick here in the middle. Unfortunately, in this draft, he had the last option to pick, and ironically, the 101 was the last pick anybody wanted. Now, this was a third-round reversal. Maybe you don't know about third-round reversal, but it definitely is highly recommended. I don't even think I would do a league that doesn't have third-round reversal in a Dynasty Superflex format. There's just too much extra value by getting one of these top 5 players that you need to do a third-round reversal. Basically, what that does is whoever picks 112 gets the 201, but they also get to pick at the beginning of the third round as well. So and then the draft continues in that snake-like format. So if you're picking at the 101, you get the 212, but then you don't pick again till the 312. Then you get the 401, and then things go back to normal. But basically, it reverses that third round and then follows the snake-like format. So anyway, point being, Brandon traded out of the 101 for a third and a fourth plus a future first, and gave up his eighth as well. So I don't know that it matched up value wise, but for him and his thought process, he was looking at, again, you don't like to commit yourself ahead of time, and he didn't necessarily do that. Like early on, his picks, you can see Bo Nix, Devon Achane, Garrett Wilson, Trevor Lawrence. He still isn't committed one way or the other. Roma Dunze kind of fell to him at the 512. Zay Flowers fell. Then Chris Olave at the 712. He still isn't really committed one way or the other. Then Tua. Then Brian Robinson. Still isn't committed one way or the other. Then he starts to commit when it came to the tight end. So he decided to wait on the tight end position, which in a start two tight end league is difficult to do, but he went ahead and took some dart throws on Brenton Strange and Theo Johnson. Decent dart throws. I like both of their prospects as young tight ends. They both should be starters for their squads this year, so either could have a breakout this year, and if both have a breakout, well, he's going to really hit hard on it. But after grabbing those two, then he decided to go Jalen Noel, then Jalen Wright, and you can see he's grabbed some more younger players. Now, he did grab Stephon Diggs and J.K. Dobbins over on the side, but once you go into a young build, as long as most of your players are young, Stephon Diggs and J.K. Dobbins are players that he'll be able to trade away later if they're doing well. So that's the point. He did a very good job of not committing one way or the other for a very, very long time. And that's how you want to try and stay grounded in your draft, is not commit yourself one way or the other early on. All right. Now, we were talking about team builds. There are basically three different types of team builds. Now, one is what's known as productive struggle. What is productive struggle? What does that mean, right? If you're new, you might not be familiar. Productive struggle means that you're going to draft for value and with a little slight lean towards youth. Okay, you are not trying to win year one, which for years was a great strategy because many people come into the startups and they make their draft and they look at their team after the draft and they're like, hey, I can win it, right? Well, you got 12 teams in your league, and if 10 or 11 of those teams think that they're going to win this year, well, that kind of makes it really tough. If 10 or 11 teams are all trying to win, you want to zag when the others are zigging, right? So if you go the other way and you're the only team doing the productive struggle, as in not trying to win, they call it that or the productive tank, whatever you want to call it. But there's ways to ethically tank in Dynasty, we'll put it that way, as opposed to tanking in a redraft league where you just give away all your good players. In Dynasty, yes, you can trade away point scoring players, but you can acquire future rookie picks for those point scoring players. That's something you cannot do in a redraft league. So in a Dynasty format, you can, rather than trying to build a team that's going to win in 2025, you can try and build a team that's going to win in 2026 or 2027, right? You generally don't want to look too far out ahead. You don't want to be looking 5 years down the road because things change so quickly in the NFL that you, like, look at Jaden Daniels, for instance, right? Jaden Daniels was a high draft pick, both in the NFL and in fantasy drafts, right? But in our rookie drafts, like, he was typically the second quarterback taken behind Caleb Williams. It happened in the NFL draft, happened in our rookie drafts. But what has happened since then? Well, Jaden Daniels had an amazing run last year, the second half on, going all the way back to, I pretty much ironically, the Hail Mary that he threw to beat Caleb Williams himself. The direction that those two players went, Caleb Williams went kind of down, whereas Jaden Daniels just soared. All right. Soared so high that he is now going 101 in some dynasty startups. He's typically going as one of the top 3 picks, though, with Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, and or Jaden Daniels. Meanwhile, Caleb Williams, his value has kind of fallen. He was the 101 in a lot of rookie drafts last year, going in startups anywhere near the back end of the first into the second round. Now, sometimes he still goes in the second round because people knew that he was going to struggle probably his rookie season. So the true believers are still believing in him. He still has Roma Dunze, still has DJ Moore. They just drafted Colson Loveland. Maybe they let Keenan Allen go. But again, still plenty of good weapons there. And now they brought in Ben Johnson, the offensive mastermind from the Lions, to Chicago. So that can only help him versus what that disaster was last year, as you would call the Chicago Bears offense, whatever you want to consider it. But the point being is Jaden Daniels significantly increased his value over Caleb Williams. And this is just a year later. Go back to some other guys. Think Anthony Richardson. Anthony Richardson, going into last season, was a first-round startup pick, even second round in some leagues. His value is completely sunk. He is going down now in rounds 9, 10, 11 even, right? So go back to even worse, and I hope this is not what Anthony Richardson's case is, but it could be. And look at Trey Lance, right? Trey Lance he had been getting taken in the first or second round of dynasty startups at one point. So you can see things change pretty quickly, and that's what I mean. Like, if you're building an all-young team and you're just like, okay, I'm going to draft Cam Ward and Jackson Dart and Shedeur Sanders, and that's going to be my QB room. Well, the problem with that is not even one of those quarterbacks might hit. Now, the odds are at least one of them will, but what if that one is Will Howard? Because Aaron Rodgers gets injured this year, and then Will Howard comes in and looks decent. And he's the guy in Pittsburgh, right? And he actually outplays Cam Ward. Those are all well within now that the odds of that particular scenario happening are slim, but they're all within the range of outcomes. And that's the point, is you can go too far down that road of productive struggle. And yes, part of the productive struggle is the plan that you're going to get yourself a top 3 pick in the next year's rookie draft. But at the same time, you don't want to go too far down. Like, you don't have to completely get it down to where you're scoring only 50 points in a given week. Trust me, if you're in a league like this that we just did, if you're under 100 points in a week, you're going to have one of the worst teams, okay? So you don't have to crush your hopes too much in a productive struggle. Now, the second is a positional hoard. Now, a positional hoard is something that I only recommend for seasoned players. You don't want to do a positional hoard if you're not a seasoned player and you know how to trade well, or if you're in a league that you don't think is going to be trading much. It doesn't make much sense to draft 5 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds if you don't think you're going to be able to deal any of them, right? You don't want all that value pumped into the quarterback position. Yes, it's okay to have 4 or 5 good starting quarterbacks, but you want to kind of spread those out, maybe 1 in the top 3 rounds or 2 in the top 3 rounds, 1 or 2 in rounds 6 through 9, and then another one in rounds 10 through 12, right? That way you end up with 4 starting quarterbacks, okay? But if you rip off 5 straight quarterbacks because the value is falling, that's the thing. One of my Patreons Steve S. in a recent startup, he ended up grabbing 4 quarterbacks in the first 6 rounds. He did not go into the draft planning on doing that, but Trevor Lawrence and Cam Ward both fell to the turn of the 5-6, and he thought they were both values at that spot, which I feel I agree with him. They are both values at the end of the 5th, beginning of the 6th rounds. So he went ahead and drafted both Cam Ward and Trevor Lawrence. Now, there's at least 1 or 2 other teams in that league that need quarterback, and quarterback is pretty easy to hoard because, or not easy to hoard, but easy to be flexible with, because in a super flex format, if there's 12 teams, think about it, there's only 32 teams in the NFL, meaning there's 32 starting quarterbacks. And of those 32 starting quarterbacks, usually the bottom 4 or 5 of them are not exactly ideal asset. Like, who's New Orleans starting quarterback? We don't even know right now, do we? Derek Carr retired. They drafted Tyler Shook. They have the incumbent Spencer Rattler. So it's not an ideal situation right now, quarterback there. Aaron Rodgers in Pittsburgh, right? Who was their quarterback before Rodgers signed? Was it Mason Rudolph? Was it Will Howard, the rookie? We don't know. But what if Rodgers gets hurt? Like, Rodgers looks okay, but in Dynasty, like, he's already told us that this is his last season. Right now, you can choose to believe that or not, but at the same time, you don't want to be drafting Aaron Rodgers like this is 2013. You want to be drafting him as your, like, 3rd or 4th quarterback, knowing that you're only going to get 1 year out of him. If you're stuck with Aaron Rodgers as your 2nd quarterback, you're probably going to be in trouble at quarterback, especially in a best ball format or even in a lineup league that's super flex. So you want to draft wisely. The quarterback position is generally the most valuable in superflex dynasty formats. So that's a general comment. Again, this league we just did, you can see Brock Bowers went at the 101. Let me repeat that. Yes, Brock Bowers went at the 101. I'm going to share this for you again. See that? Brock Bowers 101. Now, why did that happen? Well, this is a pretty seasoned group of characters in this league, and again, it's best ball. Start 2 tight end plus the 0.75 tight end premium. That type of format led to Brock Bowers, not only Bowers going 101, but Trey McBride here going at the 109 to Ty DeClaire. And you could argue that he got a steal with McBride at the 109, because he could have, arguably, McBride could have gone 102 in this format, and I wouldn't have batted an eye. Okay? So you can see the other tight ends went earlier as well than their average ADP. All right? So, point being, know your league mates, know the format, know what you can do, whether it's going to be a trade happy league or not. Because if there's not going to be a lot of trading going on, I'll tell you first off that makes for a boring league. But know that, and if there is a lot of trading going on, then you can potentially do that second type of build that I was talking about, which is a positional hoard. Now, I've done a number of leagues where I've done a wide receiver hoard, you could say, where I've drafted just a shitload of wide receivers in rounds, I don't know, 5 through 12. I've done almost every pick as a wide receiver. What that does for you is it makes you very flexible at the position, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you just want to trade or dump the last one that you picked. By having multiple wide receivers, like 8 to 10 good wide receivers, that means that you could even, especially in a best ball format, you could even go as high as trading your best wide receiver. And because it's best ball, those other receivers are going to make up for that difference, and you're going to get another elite asset at maybe a different position by trading an elite wide receiver. that example I gave of Steve, where he drafted 4 quarterbacks in his first 6 picks, right? He drafted Josh Allen in the first. I can't remember who in the second, but let's just say it was Bo Nix, right? So he had Allen, Bo Nix, Trevor Lawrence, and Cam Ward. Okay. Now, of those 4, Cam Ward's probably the one that I would trade if all things were equal, because he's a rookie and we don't know what we're going to get out of him. Okay. But the flip side of that is he does have a tremendous upside. He could outscore Trevor Lawrence this year. He could even outscore Bo Nix this year. I don't think he's going to outscore Josh Allen. But the point that I'm getting at is Cam Ward could be very serviceable. He could be fine. So could Trevor Lawrence. So could Bo Nix. So Steve could actually consider trading Josh Allen in this case, because he'd be left with Nix, Lawrence, and, as long as he believes in him, Cam Ward, right? Then he'd have 3 solid quarterbacks still going into the season, and you can get an absolute haul for Josh Allen, regardless of format. So that's the point. I know this is Dynasty, and we look at it and we want this team that's just going to dominate for 10 years. But the reality is that's just not what happens 99% of the time. Nobody drafts a team that dominates for 10 years. Okay. Do you have teams that dominate for 2 or 3 year stretches? Absolutely. That happens a lot. Okay. But it comes through proper team construction, good roster building, good timely trades. You have to have some luck break your way. I'm going to give you an example of a team that I drafted 5 years ago, 6 years technically, 2020 startup, one of the first ones I did. And this was the one that I was talking about earlier that I did with my co-owner, the Reaper. Here we go. All right, let me push this down. There we go. Okay, so this was 2020, this draft. This league's still going on. This is a Dynasty Land League. And you can see our team over here. There it is. All right. Now, I don't know why all of our picks aren't highlighted, because we did take Josh Allen in the second round at the 209. Yes, this was prior to Josh Allen. This was the draft before Josh Allen's blow-up season. We got him at the 209. You can see we drafted Dak Prescott at the 111. Now, we drafted a productive struggle team. We did not try to go into this draft. We did kind of foreshadow that we were going to be able to draft a productive struggle. Many of these guys, this was their first Dynasty draft, so we figured they would all be trying to win right away. So after watching a bunch of videos, we were really new into Dynasty. We decided, hey, we'll probably be better off maybe not necessarily having to try and win year one, but still draft good young talent. So that's what we kind of went with. And we drafted Dak Prescott in the first. Then with the second round, we had the 202. We traded back to get the later second and third round pick of this guy. Plus, we got his first for our second. And so in the future, what was the 21 draft? So we ended up getting Josh Allen and A.J. Brown going into his second season. Now, the crazy thing is, you can see there, we got Josh Allen and A.J. Brown. Those were our picks. Then we got DK Metcalf in the fourth going into his second season. This was off of his rookie season. Then we traded up to grab CeeDee Lamb in the middle of the fifth. This was prior to his rookie season. So this was out of the draft, knowing that he went to the Cowboys. We were building that stack immediately, Dak and CeeDee Lamb. Now, we did draft him ahead of Justin Jefferson, so as great of a pick as this was, it still could have been slightly better, I guess. But I'll take CeeDee. I got no problem with it. But anyway, the point being that I'm getting to here is that these first 5 picks we made, Dak, Josh Allen, A.J. Brown, DK, and CeeDee Lamb, those 5 guys are still on our roster to this day. Now, that is kind of unprecedented, but it just goes to show if you do draft a good squad, you can hang on to it and you can be pretty productive. We've won this league once, finished second once, and finished third once. And that was last year. And had it not been for Derrick Henry's injury that year that he was the overall number 1 player, when he got hurt midway through the year, we could have been looking at a second championship that season. But anyway, these top 5 guys, we still have none of the remaining players do we have on our roster. And this is 5 years later. So, but we didn't have any of the remaining players after probably 3 years in. Denzel Mims, ouch. See, that was a pick, Denzel Mims, where we drafted it specifically only because we were going young. We made mistakes. As good of a draft as this was for the first 5 rounds, we definitely made mistakes. And that's why it pays to do these exercises and go back and look on some mistakes that you may have made and learn what not to do. We drafted Denzel Mims. We drafted Drew Lock. We drafted Drew Lock over Tom Brady. Now, Drew Lock is still playing today. Tom Brady isn't. But Drew Lock isn't worth more than Tom Brady. Much more than Tom Brady. We drafted Zach Moss. You can see some of the guys around where we made those selections. So, again, we drafted Drew Lock over Tom Brady, Justin Herbert. So that would have obviously been the better pick. Sam Darnold. But we drafted him over Matt Ryan, Matthew Stafford, Kirk Cousins. Like a bunch of these guys we could have gotten 2 or 3 good years of production out of instead of going so young that we felt we needed to take Drew Lock. Right? Now, that didn't pan out for us, but say we had drafted Justin Herbert instead, things would be looking a lot different, right? I mean, we'd be sitting on Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and or Dak Prescott. Like, I don't know how we would have played that out. But again, here, you go back to, let me bring up the Zach Moss and Denzel Mims picks right here in rounds 8 and 9. I've learned that in rounds 8, 7, 8, 9, 10, rather than going too young, I've leaned more towards going with the productive veterans because there's plenty of point-scoring veterans that fall into this range that end up playing longer than you think. Let's see the wide receivers in that range. Trying to find, Keenan Allen went in round 7 here. Mike Evans, where did he go? Mike Evans fell. I just remember him falling because people thought he was old. He was 27. Or maybe he was 26. People thought he was old. Oh, he actually went in round 4. Okay, my bad. But Keenan Allen in round 7, I mean, that was a steal. Michael Pittman down here round 9. Now, I think that was Pittman's rookie season. So, Brandon Ayuk down here round 10. This is just wild going back and doing these kind of exercises and looking at them. Man, Tony Pollard's still around. Round 13. I don't think Tony Pollard's going in round 13 every single year. All right. No, he might actually be a little more expensive than that this year. Round 11, I think, is his ADP. But anyway, there's a good example, good trip down memory lane there, just to give you an idea. But the point being is that if you go through most of those teams in that league, it's now 5-6 years later. The majority of the assets that we drafted, nobody is still on their original teams. It's hard pressed. I don't know any other leagues that I have where I still have the first 5 guys that I picked, that are any of the leagues that are 5 years old, that I still have that many assets. I think there's one league where I still have Lamar Jackson and George Kittle from, but that's it. Just those two. Yeah, it's very, very hard. That's why, again, I pointed out you don't want to be looking 5-10 years down the road when you're making your selections. You just want to be looking at in a 2 to 3 year window. It's okay to do a productive struggle and ethically tank year one, but do it the right way, and set the starting lineup, set your best players in it, trade away your points. Most leagues are determined by max points for in lineup leagues for the draft order, the rookie draft order in the following year, or they're determined by the total points scored in a best ball format. So anyway, that's all I've got for you. Hopefully, I know that might have been a mouthful or a lot to take in, but there's a lot that goes into a dynasty startup, and don't be afraid to ask. I've got many resources for you to jump into. My Patreon, patreon.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. You can leave your questions in the comments. Please hit the like, smash that like, and subscribe. You can also hit me up with buymeacoffee.com, buymeacoffee.com/Birdhouse Dynasty Show. So don't be afraid to do those things. Reach out with your questions. Be a smarter dynasty player. Win some leagues. And with that, I want to remind you, with Dynasty, you never stop working.